definition, the spirit of the times, right? That's really what Zeitgeist is all about. And I think Peter Joseph made a great choice in his name because he's trying to make that come about as the spirit of our time. These are the tenets of Zeitgeist. A resource-based economy applying the scientific method to social concern and respecting human health and the earth. People are commenting on the stream. We're really missing out. I can't see your comments and we can't respond. That's unfortunate. Okay, Zeitgeist movement is a recognition of the need to rid our capitalist system in favor of a resource-based economy. That system removes money from the equation and thus the corruption that comes with it. Zeitgeist declares the Earth common heritage to all of the Earth's people. The resources available to this new economy. Zeitgeist movement applies the scientific method to social concerns. In so doing, real solutions are arrived at without any regard for issues other than the social concern being addressed, right? If it was a resource-based economy, the levees in New Orleans would have been the best levees that could be constructed for the geography of the area. There wouldn't be any other consideration like budgetary concerns and a vote in the legislature, and they would have been sound enough and large enough to weather that storm, I believe. So the Zeitgeist movement uses computerization and robotic automation as a solution. There's a heavy emphasis on education and personal growth. It's not about people. It's not about power. It's about people. Okay, so what is the mission of our particular chapter? Addendum, when you watch Addendum, it wants boycotts. We're just too small, not just in Jersey, but in general, for those to be effective. So our mission really is simply to spread the word, just to get awareness out that there is such a thing as a resource-based economy. Like, it's a real solution that could work. People don't even think about it. They think of money as if it's like as humans, we're born to be in a family, right? We're born to, we have needs like, we have to be around water, etc. People think that money is one of the things that we're inherently born with, I feel. And this is, money has served us well, but I think that we have abundance now, and it's time to move past that. So our purpose, the purpose and function of the state chapter: educate the local regional public about the tenets of the Zeitgeist movement and drive to increase membership, spread awareness of the movement, enhance the local Zeitgeist community. So the first thing I want to sort of make an open forum is how can we spread the word? Now I think it's all about the movies. I could be wrong about this. I've raised this before. What got me into Zeitgeist was seeing Addendum. That's what started it. And then I was late enough to it that Moving Forward was already available at that point. I rarely hear of a person who didn't come to be like-minded about Zeitgeist without having seen the movie. Has any of you, who here saw the movie and that's how you got hooked? Okay, and no one else? Okay, that's everyone, right? Okay, so in my opinion, the thing for us to do is just to spread the word about the movies. That's all I think, if we can, we want to be able to answer questions, field these questions as they come. But I think that if people see the movie, it does the selling for us, and then they want to become active.
I don't know where they're going. No,
okay, so we have a personal goal of having an event every month leading up to the summer of Zeitgeist. We have, of course, our event here today in March as CA. In April, we will have an event on Tax Day. We're going to have this at the Trenton Library. It is going to be, Tax Day is traditionally the 15th, but they didn't do that this year. They made it the 17th, which is inconveniently on a Tuesday. So it's going to be a small gathering. It is going to be from 5 p.m. to 7:30. That's really, the library will shut at 8 o'clock, so we have to be out. Then we'll have an event on Mother's Day, and we'll try to spin that to be about Mother Earth. Right? Funny as that sounds, it's a good one. We don't have a location for that. Okay, if anyone has an idea, it's preferred that it's a place that is in charge. In June, we don't have a name for it yet, but we'll be meeting on June 10th in Princeton. It's in Touring Basin Park, and by June it should be nice weather. there's a gazebo, maybe isn't the right word because it's a large structure. So if there's inclement weather, we'll be under a roof. And we have a permit to be in the park, so the feds can't kick us out. In July and August, there's nothing planned. So if any of you have any ideas, you know, like a park in your area, that would be great. More about the chapter. We don't have a hierarchy. There's no like officers or anything. We're not. This isn't the Elks Club. We're all volunteers, so we have to take whatever people give us. You know, if somebody is willing to do something for the movement, that's fine. But we really shouldn't request that. We also can't take donations, you know, because it like poisons the well. I mean, this is supposed to be a movement against this monetary system, so it's just sort of, I mean, and it'll be $10 for a ticket. It just strikes me as weird. So I guess that is really what I wanted to say about the chapter. Okay, this is our goal. Really, is just to educate the public. I don't have a very rehearsed speech about this. The next thing I want to say is, I want to address is why was Occupy asked to speak? Okay. Occupy Newark is Tobias, and he has texted me that he's on his way. We're very happy to hear from him. They moved everyone out of Occupy Newark. They're not there anymore. Elliot, maybe you can bring us up to speed on that.
Well, as far as Occupy goes, I've not only been active with Occupy Newark, but also with New Brunswick and Trenton and Princeton as well. And they've already...
Can you come up here and speak just so that you can be heard by the stream? We asked Occupy to speak because they're sort of, they're like-minded, you know? It's true that they don't have a defined set of goals, but they certainly want economic justice. That's what they're looking for. So we invited Occupy Newark and Occupy Trenton. Why don't you give a little report about both of them?
Not only Occupy Newark and Trenton, but also Princeton and New Brunswick as well. And I've also been somewhat active with Occupy Wall Street in Philly. And I can say from my experience in going to all 6 of these and a couple of more in Fort Lauderdale and Orlando and a couple of other ones, Occupy Congress as well, I can sense right now people are already beginning to ask the question about, you know, what are we doing here in this system, or why is it this way, you know, why can't we change or something like that. And it's critical, I think, for all of us here as individuals, as a movement, to get ourselves out there to engage with the broader community that's asking these questions already. I've met tons of people that have already, you know, somewhat on their way to, like, you know, getting their ideas out there or whatever about what they thought was going on or whatever. But, you know, if we could try to get more people, like, introduced to these ideas, you know, not just by doing that, but, you know, through these town halls, through canvassing, and through a lot of other tactics that have been used by other movements in the past, such as ESWA's tactics of canvassing or whatever. We might have somebody coming up from ESWA from New Brunswick also, but, you know, it's critical that we get out to the Occupy movement and to other like-minded movements, so that way we could really, hey, how you been? All right. This is Mike from ESWA New Brunswick. So anyway, I was getting into why we got to really outreach to the Occupy movement and, you know, some of our goals here. I don't think, you know, personally, from my experience, there's so many like-minded out there that are just coming out of the woodwork, more or less. And it's critical that we really get to them at this point. You know, that's how the critical mass is building up right now. And again, that's about all I gotta say. You know, any other updates or whatever. Also, aside from Newark getting evicted, Trenton is almost on the verge of getting there. They're trying to change the rules around for some of the, you know, for the Veterans Memorial Park at this point. So far, I don't have any regular full updates on there on that front, but, you know, this is showing how the system doesn't want any systemic change, how it's reluctant to really, you know, acknowledge that there are serious problems that have to be addressed, because that's part of the reason why it exists, because it uses money and because of these inequalities that are not going to get thoroughly addressed enough through, you know, the basic means and regular means that we know today. I think it's going to be through a big, you know, movement like what's going on with Occupy at this point. And, you know, so I gotta say, is there anything else anybody wanted to bring up here, whatever, questions or?
I sort of feel like we missed an opportunity with Occupy, because they're not on Wall Street anymore like they were. You know, that's the time to engage them when it's a big mass movement. Like here you can see in some of the Occupy Trenton pictures, there's times in which it was very active. Here, maybe I have a secret one moment, Elliot.
Yeah.
Like up here, there's a time in which people were rallying, you know, and this is, what's the name of the park?
Veterans Memorial Park.
Veterans
I've watched
Memorial.
this a number of times, and this one I think, I've been to a couple of these big protests that you see out here. That one I think was when we went to go against fracking when they tried to frack the Delaware. I was there. It's critical that we get to these massive. May 1st, they're doing a general strike all over the place. March 14th, we're going to be having a meeting discussing a lot of this stuff. If anybody wants to come down, great. We're going to be talking about police brutality and the whole 9 yards, the prison industrial complex. This would be a great opportunity to address why they're the way they are, why we have people that are living in horrible conditions on Stuyvesant Ave, and even the guy that got kicked out of his home in New Brunswick, why is it that, we're doing all this stuff? So I don't think we've missed that opportunity per se, but they're just kind of like, they're doing GAs still. I mean, Trenton's every 9 to 4, every night, every day, they're still doing their stuff, but like you said, it's critical that we get out to these movements and out to the people to engage with. So.
Now, if you go to an Occupy and you want to speak about Zeitgeist and spread the word, I really think the best way to do it is not to begin preaching about it, on your soapbox. I think really what you got to do is tell them about the movies. Now, I made a little flyer to give out today to all the new faces, right? And on this flyer it says, to learn more, YouTube Zeitgeist Addendum, YouTube Zeitgeist moving forward. You don't even need to give them a URL. They just go to YouTube. And the reason I put down the global website and our New Jersey website was just because the page looked blank. It's really about telling them to see the movies. Once they see the movies, they would discover Zeitgeist.com. If they live in New Jersey, they'll find the chapters link, It's perfectly fine to tell them about it, but it's so easy. Just give them a little card that says YouTube Zeitgeist Addendum, YouTube Zeitgeist moving forward. Then they do it on their own if they're not occupying, right? They have to go home in order to do it. Or occupying Newark. Look how it's dwindling down.
They got evicted on, February 16th, I think. Yeah. The day that I got back from Florida, they got evicted. So
Tobias told me about a YouTube video with the mayor, Cory Booker, went down there, and I watched this clip, and it was sort of like him, you're just being a fly on the wall, him talking to the occupied people, and he was saying that first of all, I like Cory Booker. He's just more of today's politics. You know what I mean? He was talking about the power. They were using the power, and it wasn't fair because they weren't paying for the power. They sort of just tapped into the lines that were there. It just seems like such a tiny little minor concern. How much power are they drawing? I don't want to say it's pennies. I don't really know what it is, but some corporate fat cat said, look, they're taking our power, and I don't know. It's just more of the same.
You're seeing this not just in Newark, but Trenton's about to get hit with the same thing, and Atlantic City also, they were getting slammed left and right from all the casinos were basically blocking off roadways and lots and stuff, and this just shows you how much of a conscience the system doesn't really have at this point.
Now, we feel that Occupy is like-minded, that they're friends, and the reason is that a resource-based economy is their solution too. They might not know it because it's all about money. You can fight all of these battles for women's reproductive rights, for the Native American, for
the prison industrial,
getting rid of landmines in some Serbia, Bosnia, right? There's all these individual tiny little causes, but if there was a resource-based economy, it wouldn't be relevant. None of those, there wouldn't be landmines in Bosnia-Herzegovina, if you follow what I'm saying. Okay, so this is just what our agenda will be today, and it's loose, okay? Because we're just, here in a little group. So we'll hear from some speeches. Hopefully, Tobias will be here. Now, I invited Charlie from Occupy Trenton. At first he was extremely gung-ho about speaking, He even had opinions. Like I said, leaders of the movement will be here, and he took took exception to that, and he said I should just say members or whatever. I worked with him and did just that, and I I don't know, he didn't show at the last minute. There is a GA today.
Yeah, every Friday, Saturday at 2 p.m. there's usually a GA, so there's a couple of conflicts there.
I also invited Occupy Princeton, the contact you gave me. She didn't reply, you know, and I'm not going to be a pest, so I just left that alone. I wish we had more people from Princeton. Then I think we should have an open forum in which we talk about two major issues that are problematic within the movement itself. Why do I say that? Every time you see a YouTube video of Jen and Peter and taking the questions after, like they're at the movie premiere, he's given a presentation, this always comes up. Who's going to do the work? You know. Now it's not a simple answer. How do you call them? Automatons, right? Because you have to say, well, you know, with today's level of technology, we're coming to automate. I mean, why are you going to push the? Why are you going to have an elevator operator if you can push the button, right? So this needs to be figured out so it can be conveyed in a simple way to people. We're going to work towards. There is a gap, you know. I mean, like if you live up in Sussex County in a rural area, you can't really put your garbage in a chute and it flies down. It isn't the Venus Project, you know. Someone's going to have to still do the work, so we can talk about that. The other thing is, how are we going to transition to, most people are thinking about the Venus Project, you know, this futuristic world. And how are we going to transition to a resource-based economy? Then we're going to watch this movie called Awakening, which Brian brought to our attention. And it's really good. You know, I'm watching that thing and I'm saying, boy, this guy's really sort of aligned with the Zeitgeist movement. And then at the end, Zeitgeist. That's like, of course, duh. And then Ronnie will give us a nice tour of the submarine, okay, the USS Ling. This is a place that does not celebrate war, right? It celebrates the people who, you know what I mean? Like we're gonna try and want to be friendly, right? When we go look at the sub and everything. Okay. So let's move on first to speeches. Now here I have this. We don't really need to follow any sort of order at all. Maybe Moses or Moses. I know you have something you want to. Why don't you come on up and. Let me not be in the way, right? I guess I should introduce you, right? That's the right thing to do. This is Moses. He's on every team speech. Got something to say about the movie.
Hello everyone. My name is Moses, as you know. I'm going to give you a little bit of background history about myself. Let's see. Alright, well, I've been employed since I was out of high school, about 16, 17 years ago. I haven't been unemployed. I have almost no debt. A husband, father, 3 kids, you know, and I'm pretty doing okay. But when I seen how bad things were, everyone always talks about how bad things are. And you know, growing up, you know, I used to live in the projects, growing up in the Bronx, and the part that was considered bad. And some of the things the topics I'm talking about is like perspective and how we perceive things and how that affects us and how that can be a possible good thing or bad thing, but we may not see it as of yet. So, as growing up in the projects, I noticed it was only a few people that was actually the problem. Like maybe 15, 20 people. I lived in an area where it was like 6, 7 buildings, like 14 stories tall, with like 8 apartments on each floor. So it's literally thousands of people, like usually around anywhere from 3 to 6 people living per household. And it only took maybe 30 or 40 people to paint a negative picture on a whole group. So growing up there, I always kept that in mind, you know, there was a lot of nice people that helped me out and they used to help each other, but that was overshadowed by maybe the people, you know, who was getting into drugs or fighting or gunshots. So made me think about certain things. As you know, like I'm a Zeitgeist member. I've been one from the start. And about being a Zeitgeist member, you know, we're all humans, but a lot of people have a problem with labels. And as for me, how I see it, labels is not really a problem. The problem with labels is when people define themselves by only one, and they focus on that. Like I'm a Zeitgeist member, but that's not only who I am. You know, I'm also a father. You know, I'm an activist. You know, I'm a human being. I like science. You know, labels are not fine. You can pick the labels that suit you, but we're not defined by one. We're defined by many. So when people say, "Oh, this person is a leader and this person is that," they're applying that label on there. They say, "I just only want to be a human," but human is a label as well. So these are some of the things I think, you know, we should start paying attention to, and not jump down at, you know, on a label thing, because that's just, you know, applying another label to a label itself. Now, the topic I want to talk about is, like, you know, we all knows about the technology, you know, the information, you know, all of that, you know, we know, as far as us, most of us here, we know what is possible, what can be done. The problem is that, you know, it's our perception, again, and how we perceive things, and also our values. So, you know, that's pretty much what I want to talk about. Now, some perceptions, you know, that may seem good can have later on effects that we can't foresee. Like an example that I thought of was how, like me personally as a parent, I love kids. You know, I love all kinds of kids. I see them on the street, you know, I see them not doing something, and I'll talk to them, or they're in the store and they're buying candy. I'm like, maybe you should get a banana instead. You know, playing with them, wrestling around with them. I love kids. But growing up, you know, we're told, you know, don't talk to strangers. You know, don't talk to strangers. And, you know, that sounds good on the surface, not talking to strangers. But when you think about it, growing up, what you have now, you have a bunch of people, decent adults, and they don't interact with kids because they think, you know, kids are told not to talk to strangers. Because, you know, we know there's problems with pedophiles and, you know, people worry about doing to kids, but there's so many more people who don't do those things. It's how many times a child gets lost and somebody finds them and brings them to their parent. You know, that doesn't make the news. What makes the news? The child that gets taken away, no one finds them, and later they're found dead or something happened to them. There's probably hundreds more cases where decent people do decent things and help kids, and the only thing we see is negative. So we tell our kids, don't talk to strangers, because all we perceive is negative. And what happens is we have a generation of people, decent people, who don't interact with kids because they think, you know, I don't want to be seen as a pedophile. You know, I don't want to think, you know, I'm a stalker. You know, I don't want to do this. If you wrestle with a kid, you touch them, you're like, oh, maybe they touched you in a certain place. And a lot of people, instead of just being bothered with it, you know, they just leave it alone. And what happens is, now we have a situation, we have lots of kids out on the street. You can't say nothing to them because, you know, their parents tell them, you know, they have this negative stigmatism about adults. And we suffer as a whole because of it. So those are the things about perception and value. Something that seems benign and makes sense up front, we can't see the larger picture. But that's not to say that, you know, bad things do happen, of course, but we got to keep it in perspective of the bigger picture. And it's hard to get the bigger picture when every time all we see is just a negative. We think about it, we're looking at appearances, where people, you know, the clothes they wear, the hair, the style of their hair. We look at them and we perceive them as being different. And once we perceive them being different, we like kind of shun them away. What happens with that? They get used to being shunned away, so they don't want to be interact with anyone else. You see that people like the Gothics, when they wearing all black, and we paint this negative image on them, and so that reflects in our culture as well. And if you think about it, those are the type of people that we look at that easy to point out because they're different. Those are the type of people that, you know, we should be admiring because they go against the grain. It takes a lot of courage to try to be yourself when you know everything else around you is different. Those are the type of things, like a lot of us, when we are here, we have different points of view, and it's not popular. So we should understand how it is to see people are perceived different than us. They have the courage to be who they are, regardless of what the society says about them. And I think that's a good thing. Education, our perception of education, we consider it as being important. We look at it, and We see how the education is. We probably some of the people here know about Alfred Cohn and Gilbert Monte, their perceptions of what they talk about how kids and how we see things. It's pretty wrong, and it's kind of hard. It's not always easy. And you know, the things that we're really passionate, you know, about this movement. A lot of people are passionate about certain things, and once you learn something and it hits a chord with you, your first thing is you want to go tell everybody. Just like how we had in the movie, we learned about the movement, it rang with us, and we went to try to tell everyone. And what we want is we want the information that affected us to affect them in the same exact way. And then when it doesn't, it's like, oh man, how could you not see it the same way? It's how you perceive things. What are the reasons for this? Maybe it's inconvenient for them. You know, maybe they have other problems that they're dealing with that they just can't focus on the matter. Maybe they just don't care. Those are the tough things. Also, people, you know, we want the best of everything. But maybe not us here, but you know, generally people, they want the best of everything, but don't really want to sacrifice anything to get it. Then you look, and some of them don't have a lot to sacrifice to begin with. Usually what we were sacrificing now is our time and energy, and it can be kind of hard for certain people to do that. So what do we do about that? To me, from my personal experience, what I did with my family, like for instance, a couple of years ago, I became a vegetarian. That's because you know we're all about learning. I looked at what we're doing to the food and all the negative effects that it has with the environment, such and even our bodies. And I said, "The heck with it, I'm done." So what I do, I went to tell my wife, like, "Oh, this, and this," and she's looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, "How could you not?" And my kids, I'm like, "Oh, that's disgusting. You shouldn't do that." In the long run, it didn't work. So what I did, I changed them by actions. They see me not eating the food, you know, and then they inquired about it. My kids don't inquire about it. My son looked at something about McDonald's. He doesn't want to eat fast food anymore. My daughter, she's looking at things about chicken nuggets, and she's changing. So through my actions and subtle hints, they eventually picked up on it and they realized on their own, but then they eventually start changing. Now, the initialism, the information that changed me didn't change them, but what I did, I found a way to present the information so that way they'll change themselves. And I think that's what a lot of us probably should focus on more, trying to find ways to help them change themselves. And how do we do that? We do that by not judging people, because, you know, we look at what they're doing, you know, I always had this feeling, you know, in this group, you know, capitalism is like a dirty word. It's like, because, you know, it's associated with a lot of bad things. And you look at it, it's like, how can you do that? How can you do this? How can you do that? If you look at, like, if someone's eating meat, like, how can you do that? All the problems it's causing, or how can you work for a bank, you know, for all the things that they do. That in the long run doesn't work, and it also puts people through a guilt trip. Maybe they do feel the way that we do feel, but you know, they're stuck in it just as badly as we are. So if we judge them, they're less likely to want to maybe be involved. But if we accept them for who they are, their faults, maybe they bought something that came from some bad place or whatever, we don't judge them. We accept them for who they are. They're more likely to come in, and then through watching our actions, they'll be more likely to change their values as well. So instead of pointing at the finger, just ignore that, give subtle hints, and being around a bunch of people who are more socially minded and conscious, they'll be more likely to make those changes on their own without having a guilt trip. Because, you know, we want to bring more people in. These are some of the things we probably should look at doing. This astrophysicist named Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he said something that I thought made a lot of sense. He said, it was actually talking to Richard Dawkins, he says, you have facts, and when you present the facts, it's not, you know, here are the facts, you're even an idiot or you're not. It's here is the facts, and here's the sensitivity to your state of mind. As it's facts plus the sensitivity, when convolved together, creates impact. And that's the thing we want to create. We want to create impact. So we got to find the best ways to try to do that. There's many different avenues. It's not just one way. There's many different ways, because many different people see ways differently. So those are the things we probably going to need some people to be really extreme. There's going to be some people who reach for that. There's going to be some people to be really mild. There's going to be some people to do it in the middle. We need all of those all the time. Another thing is, we're an emotional species. You know, we feel things. You know, as much as science and logic and all that is great and it makes perfect sense to some of us, most people do things because it feels good to them. Recent example is Con 2012. 70 million views in about a week. Why? Because people felt something with it. I watched it. You know, I looked at it. You know, and you see the, you know, you hear about the guy. He's doing all these bad things and kidnapping kids. And the kid, his brother got killed, and he felt really sad. He was crying. It touched me emotionally. Because why? Because we feel those things. So we gotta start connecting more emotionally to people, not just intellectually. Because most people feel things first. And if we can get them to feel good about the right things first, and then when someone comes along and tries to challenge it, that encourages them to be, you know, just naturally be defensive, and then they want to go prove their point, and then they're going to go back and they're going to find all the right information that's already there because they feel it's first. So it's a combination. It's not just one thing. It's going to be a combination of things. So, and another thing, when I first got involved in this, you know, I was a laid back guy, practical joker, sarcastic, and so forth and so on. And when I learned this information, I started getting real serious. You know, I changed my whole demeanor changed. You know, I get real serious. I take things real seriously, and I realized that's not who I want to be. I want to be myself. You know, a joking guy, but you know, now when I present this information, I present it from my personality, not just always a serious personality. I make a joke about certain things. And what I realized in my work was I work in a law firm. I changed a lot of minds. It was there's a coworker of mine who was going to school for finance. He was going to be in the bank. He wanted to work for Goldman Sachs and everything. And me and him used to go back and we go back and talk. And I would joke with him, so forth and so on. 2 years later, he doesn't even want to work in the financial industry anymore. I was able to reach him, you know, with jokes, to being myself, and you know that made an impact. He doesn't want to do anything. His girlfriend, you know, who happens to be, you know, quote unquote Republican, there goes the label again. Now, you know, some of the things he used to talk about, she's like, oh, that's just the democratic leftist stuff. Now, they're reading a book that I gave them called The Story of Stuff, seeing how, you know, things are working with the environment, so they're making those changes. So it wasn't about pointing them, saying how wrong they were. It was about giving them little bits of information and letting them arrive to those decisions on their own. As we know, we have all the information on our side. We have all the evidence on our side. It's just people put it to the way where people can actually be open up to it. And those are the things about perspective. And I'd like to end, you know, with the quote that Margaret Mead says, and probably some of you have already heard. It says, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever does. And I think if we keep it that way, you know, little by little, maybe it's not as fast as we may like it, because this system didn't happen overnight. So it may not go away overnight. But if we keep that in mind, you know, help others, be better role models. Like my kids right now, my son, he's talking about, maybe I should open up a Zeitgeist thing in school, just on his own, because I gave him these ideas, and he's talking about these things. You know, eventually, maybe that's the way we'll change the world. Thank you.
Thanks, man. It's really good. Okay, so Elliot.
All right.
Elliot Siegel, here he goes.
All right.
Yeah, they're pretty much over here.
All right. So
Okay.
I'll just give a quick little thing. As most of you know, I'm Elliot. I've been active in the Zeitgeist movement for the last year. I've been heavily active in the Occupy movements for the last 6 months. A couple of you I met through Occupy, and what I'm going to be talking about here is the suppression of technology and a lot of the reasons why, you know, it's being suppressed, or why we need technology, and some of the big benefits that really come with it, whether it's, you know, helping out third world countries, or, you know, a lot of different things all at once, kind of. So in this day and age, we've developed beyond what we could have ever have imagined, big time. We have the ability to talk from anywhere in the world, through the internet, through Skype, all kinds of different things here and there. You know, have a better understanding of the world around us and the universe around us through a lot of the science that's come out over the past, especially, you know, a few hundred years. You know, we also have the ability to make a lot of abundance many times over, whether it's some technology or even just, you know, we have you know, even thousands of years ago when they developed irrigation or, you know, a lot of that other stuff, we have so many ways to make abundance to try and feed the world's starving people. But at this point, we could be doing a lot more than just that, but the monetary system doesn't allow us to advance this to the fullest. Why is that? Because of profit and all the other things. When new advanced technology, you know, pieces of technology usually come out, they usually come out in a very slow fashion. Sometimes they don't come out, you know, as fast to the public or whatever as they should be, since, you know, like I said, because of the current system that's in place. One advancement of this would be, say, the Z1 car that came out back in the 90s, or even the electric car overall. That's, you know, been talked about for hundreds and hundreds of years, but yet it's not fully come out yet. Partially, there's no market really at this point for it, you know, or because certain people in the industry, the oil industry, or, you know, whatever it is, they didn't want any part of that. So what do? That was it. Took care of it. We even have the ability to make 75, 80, 100 MPG cars. We didn't have the ability to do that. And, you know, another way that we usually tend to suppress a lot of things is through planned obsolescence and through the basic, you know, like, how do I put it, like a bit of an illusion of progress in a way. Back in the 80s and into the 90s and even into the 2000s, we had a lot of different advances coming out through Windows and Mac and all that other stuff. When we came out of, you know, we used to use MS-DOS for a lot of things, and now we have the ability to, you know, use a start button, or, you know, a lot of things have been made very easily and readily available to us over the years. But in the 90s, we had a somewhat like stagnant time, if you think about it. We got to Windows 3.1, then to 95, and then after that, we had 98, NT 4.0 and Workshop, and 2000 and ME before we got to XP. Why is that? Mostly because, like I said, because of profit. They want to make a buck off of every single last little bit of the, you know, advances that are made, whether big or small. And like I said, if it's too big for certain things, like what happened with Tesla, he came up with free energy, and he came up with a lot of the technology that we come up with. Without this, a lot of the stuff that we're using right now to film me, the live stream, wouldn't be here without him. So that's one of the big things. And we've even seen this in the medical field. We've seen this with Johnson & Johnson. We have medication to help out people in the third world that are severely affected by AIDS in Africa, South America, and all over the place. But they want to protect the patent rights to their, you know, medications and all that other stuff. And, you know, we even talked about at the F-29 shut down the corporations when I was in New Brunswick. We asked them, you know, could they open up a patent pool, you know, and all that other stuff. And they've been very reluctant to do it so far, but, you know, I think through a lot of these other things, maybe they'll open up to it as a stepping stone for us to get into the transition or whatever. But not just Johnson & Johnson, but we've seen this with Dr. Brzezinski. He came up with a great cure called neuroplastons. Anybody hear of those at all? Dr. Brzezinski, basically he came from Austria, and he's been studying medicine for a long time, and with the neuroplastons he was able to get rid of the whole chemo therapy way of trying to help cure brain cancer, advanced forms of it in kids aged 2 to 6 and, you know, older than that, like up to 10 or whatever. But at the same time, that came with a lot of consequences. He got chased around by the Board of Public Health for Texas, and the US FDA went after him, and a lot of these other organizations that didn't want to see them, you know, their business or whatever go under. They went after him. And we even saw this way back when what's his name, Dr. Gerson came up with the vegan diet, the umbrella cure for cancer. And look what's happened to him. He's gotten chastised and a lot of other things. He's gotten very, you know, beat down by the same medical industry, you know, by the powers that be or whatever. Hold on a second.
Is now a bad time? I shouldn't.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Sorry, guys. Just a couple of texts. Always that, you know, thing busting in.
So he was going to answer the phone.
Well, we even have.
That would have
right
been funny.
Here, we still have a lot of these, you know, same things coming up. My dad worked with GPS technology when he was working for on the AT&T ships back in the 70s. You know, I don't know if we could have made it, you know, from a big kind of a GPS system to something that fits in our car, but at the same time, you got to just think, we had computers and all that other stuff back in the 80s and into the 90s, and it took how long to get to, you know, having a little GPS thing in your car like we have today? Same thing. And Oliver also, he's another guy in the Zeitgeist movement New York chapter. He talked to me about how he was in the Army and they had computers that could self-correct themselves whenever some big glitch came into the system, you know, and yet we have to download all the virus programs and all that other stuff to try and, you know, fix all the different problems that we could easily have fixed or whatever. But, you know, why are we not doing that? Same reason that I've been given earlier. But this time we have the reason, you know, we have the technology to really, I think, further advance ourselves across the curve than I think at any point in our history. And at this point, what you're dealing with when you try to contain the development of technology, I think a lot of it is also dealing with entropy in a lot of cases. It's very emergent, like what we're advocating right here, a resource-based economy. It's a very emergent kind of society. And I think that, you know, with, in some cases, like with all due time, I think we're going to see a bigger and bigger movement, like what you're seeing kind of with the Occupy movement. A lot of this is very emergent. It's very, you know, popping up all over the place. That's kind of why I've been so active with not just Wall Street, but Trenton and a lot of these other places. So a lot of these things are very conflicting with a lot of the things that we're so used to or whatever. But we'll just see. We have the chance right now we have the chance to make ourselves from our destinies, basically, to make ourselves from a self-destructive one to one that enhances the Earth's resources to the fullest. And we also have a lot of the, you know, means to do this, and the reasons to do this because of what's happening outside. Global warming, we had a very warm winter and ice caps are melting and all that other stuff. And the benefits to this are unbelievable, and we still don't even know what the full you know, benefits are, I think, as of yet, to where we're truly at technologically, the state of technology. And I think through time, through the movement, through all the stuff that's been coming up, I think eventually we'll be able to fully, you know, work our way out of this and, you know, move further and further ahead, you know. And we could also start to really build a better world for tomorrow rather than just leaving it as an empty slogan.
Thanks.
Who wants to go next?
No, not you? Brian, then. Nothing prepared? James was going to go, but he's on the road.
Tobias, I guess.
No, he's coming from 8A, exit 8A, where you're
Oh,
from.
well, maybe we could just start the awakening, and then afterwards some people can come up and
Oh,
talk
okay.
afterwards.
Can I go get it over with?
Yes.
Tobias. Yes, wanted to go.
Awakening is a really good film. I usually run to the podium, but you know. Yeah. Peace to everyone. Thanks. I'm glad to be here and really excited. I'm from Occupy North.
Oh, well then I have to get my slide up. Start.
Spirited
Can you
by.
enter twice?
Sure, enter twice. 1, 2.
There he is. Tobias.
You're from Occupy too, no?
Actually,
Yeah, so we're spirited, Occupy North is spirited by Occupy Wall Street. I started out
Okay.
with Occupy Wall Street, just hanging out.
You wanna
with
talk
Spirit
afterwards,
Park. When I
or?
first heard about
Yeah, I
it,
think I'll just say a few words.
just like, okay, why are these people marching? We've been through these marches, you know, forever. You know, we don't need another march. And I was getting these negative comments from national media downplaying what was going on until eventually, within the second week, I decided to, because I live in North, I said, let me just catch the PATH train over there and see what was going on. And it was a mind-blowing experience for me. And my spirit immediately just pulled into it. I remember the day when I went over there, it was early afternoon, and I ended up getting home. I think it was like maybe 3 a.m. in the morning, because it was mind-boggling. I mean, mind-blowing rather. It was a phenomenon for me, because they had actually, within a 2-week period, had already set up the social systems needed for a human society to actually function. You had the People's Kitchen, the Comfort Station, the Media Station, the People's Library, and all these groups of people from different walks of life coming, sharing, giving. I felt free. It was freedom for me. And then on November the 17th, I heard about Occupy Newark being launched on November 18th. And I says, wow, I get to save some money. It's like I could just get on my mountain bike, just go several blocks, and be there. So I'm going to share with you my experience, things that I've been involved in, what I've been gaining from this whole experience as well. And the common phrase now is, you can't stop a movement whose time has come. The word occupy was the most common term used in 2011. And the phrase Occupy movement has become an idea that represents participatory democracy and freedom. So it is this idea that has been growing in the minds of millions throughout the world. For the first time for so many people, they feel they have an opportunity to have their voice heard and make a significant positive improvement within our society. This movement has quickly become a subculture with its own language, such as the use of hand signals and social network. Unfortunately, there are so many deep-rooted systemic issues that we do not fully understand, so we are stuck on the surface. Many of us just aren't well prepared for the magnitude of social issues resulted by our current monetary system. Many people do not understand that this planet, in fact, is a living organism and we are killing her. The body operates in the same manner as nature, one system relying on the other to properly function. But we have allowed our current monetary and educational systems to remove us from this reality, creating an unbalanced environment that is damaging to us all. What I've come to learn about the Occupy movement is that there are 4 groups of people. One group is solely interested in occupying public space and making that public space a community within a community, regardless of how organized or chaotic that community may appear to others. This is all they want to do, and that is occupy public space. Occupying public space is critical because it is a place where we can establish the commons and create a true democracy and set up all the social systems needed to support a fully human society. However, I'd say we are operating on limited information. The people who are well informed about how to properly set up encampments aren't helping us. They are leaving us to our own creativity and ignorance, which could be non-productive. For the most part, we act and react on limited information. Now just imagine if technicians and social engineers would have came to our encampment at Military Park located in Newark, New Jersey, and taught us and participated with setting up a fully sustainable encampment with today's knowledge. This would have created a totally different environment. Then people who are well informed in social psychology and social management would have taught us how environment shapes behavior and how to manage our resources. This too would have created a different environment. If all of this were to happen on a national or global scale, attitudes in this movement would change drastically. We would probably be able to evolve more quickly into a resource-based society where money is no longer needed for survival. Dr. Wayne Dyer stated that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. And I agree with him. Our society needs to undergo a serious rehabilitation. I see encampments as a way for people to remove the labels that have been placed on them by society and a means to become rehabilitated from our addiction with money and the negative effects of the monetary system. Andrew Lowe, professor and director for MIT Laboratory for Financial Engineering, stated in the award-winning documentary Inside Job, directed by Charles Ferguson, that neuroscientists have done experiments where they've taken individuals and put them into an MRI machine. And they have them play a game where the prize is money. And they notice that when these subjects earn money, the part of the brain that gets stimulated is the same part that cocaine stimulates. We are living in a sick society. So encampments could actually be this rehabilitation process. It could be the start of a new society, a community within a community, a subculture that gradually becomes the dominant culture. But the people who are well informed are not working with us because they are working for the 1%, or should I say enslaved by the 1%. Then there's the second group. People who respect the symbolism of occupying public space, but are more concerned with operating as a working group that bring awareness about our society and work collectively with others to create tangible solutions. This allows people to meet and organize any and everywhere. For instance, I helped organize a science and sustainability working group. Taking the approach of social entrepreneurship, the Science and Sustainability Working Group, an autonomous international working group interested in assisting occupations throughout the country, will explore the utilization of free, abundant, renewable energy through teachings and hands-on training. We will also promote and assist with the creation of community and hydroponic gardens to ensure that the fruits and vegetables grown are fresh and organic. We are currently building solar panels from soda cans and other raw materials, exploring hydroponic gardening and painting sidewalks white as a means to help reduce greenhouse gases and bring the problem of urban island heat effect to the attention of neighbors. Also within this working group, we've added a medical and education component. The education component is actually a school system that myself and others has been developing with whoever else wants to get involved. This is a global public school system that's non-affiliated with any political or religious organization, a linkage public school system, APS. Our goal is to update our education system with today's knowledge. Albert Einstein stated that technology has far exceeded our humanity. For the most part, our education system is stuck in the Industrial Revolution. We have people living in space, but we have billions of people living in poverty. Millions dying each year unnecessarily from starvation. APS is an open-door global public learning system where creativity, critical and divergent thinking is allowed to flourish. This is a democratic approach toward education and world unification, where people work together toward the common good of all human beings with the carrying capacity of the planet. So we encourage educators, especially, to break away from the production line mentality, and when students are shipped through the industrial school setting and stamped with a manufacturer date and grade when and or if they make it through this process. We believe in creating a learning environment based on one's learning abilities, not coercing students into a linear, systematic way of thinking, allowing them to maintain their cultural identity. The reason why we have chosen to create a new school system altogether is because we found that there are too many deep-rooted flaws in the current school systems. Therefore, it seemed logical to start from the ground up, to create a whole new foundation rather than mend it over time. As Buckminster Fuller stated, in order to change an existing paradigm, you do not struggle and try to change the problematic model. You create a new model and make the old one obsolete. That, in essence, is the highest service to which we are all being called. This is why I occupy. The truth of the matter is, as long as we continue to support this system, it will continue to exist. We can complain about gas prices, but as long as we are filling up our tanks, nothing of any significance will change. The 1955 Montgomery bus boycott should have taught us that much. Then there's a third group, the agitators, who just want to stir things up, piss the 1% off, and show how ugly this system really is through civil disobedience. The people in this group are willing to give up their lives and freedom for this movement. And lastly, there's a fourth group, the anonymous, or should I say, the online activists, expect us, The internet has caused our world to become that much smaller. It has allowed us to be nowhere and everywhere. We have to respect all four groups mentioned, but we also have to determine what is being effective and what isn't, and how we can make them all more effective, because each group complements the other. Each group is needed. It was James Baldwin that said, "The paradox of education is precisely this, that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he is being educated. A blanket of awareness is coming over this planet, and more people are awakening to possibilities never imagined by the average person." And I'm so thrilled to be witnessing this moment in history. In this country, we've gone from the Atlantic slave trade to integration to segregation, and now we're heading towards world unification. This is the moment we can create the golden age for all life on this planet. This is our opportunity to make the history books. Let's continue to lead the way. Peace and solidarity. Peace. Peace.
Okay, so Romeo, you'd like to come up and say something?
Yeah, I might as well.
Back to the chat.
6, 5. I've just never been able to say no to an open mic.